Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining here at Unapologetically Progressive. Once again, I am back with another video, and also we are brought to you by Dubby Energy. Click the link in the description below to save 10%. Now, today we're going to talk about gerrymandering. Of course, a few months ago, Donald Trump demanded that Republican states like Texas start redrawing their lines in the middle of the decade, which is absolutely out of the norm because normally you wait till the census is done at the end of the decade before you redraw your district lines. Well, Donald Trump decided since it's not illegal, he would demand that all Republican states do it. Now, some Republican states said they would, and they tried, and many of them failed. In fact, Utah was going to try, but their own court threw out their maps and even created a new map with a new Democratic district. And their courts are not liberal by any stretch of the imagination. It's Utah. But I digress. Anyways, Texas decided that they were going to, redo their maps at the behest of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is terrified that he's going to lose. He and his party are going to lose in the 2026 midterms. So he was trying any way at all to rig the system to where he would be able to win and his party would be able to win and keep majority in the House and the Senate. That was their goal, right? That was their plan. And so Texas, they redid their maps. Now, in return, a response, California said, okay, we're going to redraw our maps, but we're sending it to the voters. So last November, the California voter went to the polls, and by around close to 70% of the vote approved these new maps, with 5 new Democratic seats added to the districts. And that's what happened, right? Now, immediately after this loss, because Republicans, they can't take a loss, they immediately sued to block these. The Republican Party of California immediately sued to block the new map and these new districts from being able to be used in the 2026 election. Now, the Trump administration has joined that particular lawsuit, trying to block these, saying that they're unconstitutional because because they use ethnic origin and race as a factor in developing the districts, which is exactly what Texas did. Because when Texas made these 5 new seats that they made, or 5 new districts that they made for the 2026 midterm, they used race, specifically Hispanics, as a basis on these new districts. Because they saw what happened in November of 2024. Donald Trump had made big inroads with the Hispanic population. For whatever reason, it doesn't make sense to me, but he made huge inroads with large portions of the Hispanic community. And November of this year, though, after those maps were already voted on and put into place for the upcoming 2026 election, all of a sudden, all those Hispanics that had been on Trump's side voted with the Democrats again. And Texas really thought they had something in 2020, in November 2024, because all of a sudden, a voting bloc that had voted for people like George W. Bush, and even to a lesser extent, Greg Abbott, and such, had swung back after over a decade of swinging towards the Democrats, had swung back to the Republicans. But because of Trump's ICE raids and the way he's treating legal citizens, a lot of Hispanics have floated back to the Democratic Party, as seen especially in New Jersey, right? Where 5 districts that had voted for Trump flipped back to blue because how Donald Trump had treated immigrants. And so he lost a lot of very Hispanic heavy districts. But Texas did exactly the same thing that California did, right? Except California hasn't talked about how they've brought in race or anything to anything, but it was very clear that that was used in the Texas maps. But if California did use race, why is it any different than Texas using race? It's because Democrats are required to always follow the law. Democrats have to follow the law all the time. They have to follow all the rules, but Republicans are never required to follow the rules. We saw it in the government shutdown. We'll see it in the coming weeks because they agreed to something, and the Republicans, I guarantee you, will pull out of it. And that was guaranteeing a vote to take place on the ACA subsidies in December. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that will happen. I doubt it because every other time during a shutdown that Republicans have caused and Democrats were fighting for something, the Republicans always offer a little, like a cookie, right? They dangle a carrot. So the Democrats go ahead and vote with the Republicans, and then the Republicans always pull out of those deals. We hardly ever see those votes and those promises come to fruition. And so that's what's going on here, right? Is it's okay for the Republicans to violate the Constitution or break the law. But if Democrats do anything of the sort, all of a sudden, that's unconstitutional. It's okay for Republicans to do the same exact thing and explicitly state they were doing the same exact thing, right? Because Republicans in Texas were very clear what they were doing. They didn't hide it. They made very clear that they wanted to create more districts because of the Hispanic population going for the Republicans in November of 2024. So this is going to end up at the Supreme Court most likely. In the Supreme Court, we know how they're going to rule. In most cases, they tend to side with Donald Trump because, they're literally bought and paid for by Donald Trump. At least a few of them are. But we'll see. They surprised me this week with the ruling on the same-sex marriage case that they decided not to hear. So maybe the Supreme Court will surprise me again. But the fact is, they should lose in court, right? These maps should be allowed to be used because it was voted on by the people, and they have not stated anything about how they used race as a factor to draw the districts. Texas made it very clear they did. So here's the thing. If California's new maps are declared invalid, then Texas maps should be declared invalid, right? Therefore, I believe the Democratic Party of Texas needs to take their case to the courts, if it's not already in the courts. Because if California's aren't constitutional, then Texas's maps can't be constitutional. Because they specifically stated they were using the Hispanic voting bloc as the building blocks of their new districts. Now, funny thing about those districts, like I said, that voting bloc has now swept back to the Democrats after everything Donald Trump has done to the Hispanic community and immigrants in general. Right? They've swung back so hard that now it looks like even if California's maps hold up or weren't even to hold up, right? Say they got struck down by the courts. According to analysis, literally Texas would gain a seat. Maybe a seat. Out of all that mess, all the stuff going across the country, and especially with what happened in Utah the other day, the Republicans could gain an extra seat in the House chamber. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think Donald Trump's plan to gerrymander the maps in Texas and other places like that, do you support that? And do you support what California did in response to that? Or do you think both states have lost their minds and they shouldn't be doing either of it? Because honestly, as much as I support what Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California did, it's also kind of terrifying because they had been doing it a totally different way. A completely, nonpartisan group would draw the lines in California before this new voting took place last week. Anyhow, let me know in the comments. I'll see you down the road.